All right, everyone. We start off today, of course, talking about New Hampshire. We've got one new poll in post DeSantis dropping and endorsing Trump. A couple of other polls that are post Iowa, and the aggregate is pretty clear. Trump is riding up at about 55 now. Haley, meanwhile, she's still around the upper 30s. So there has been a Trump bump in the wake of being endorsed by Doug Burgum, Tim Scott, Vivek Ramaswamy, and now Ron DeSantis. It's now a two-person race. Again, you've only got one poll that doesn't have DeSantis in there, and it looks like Trump did indeed take most of that support. It's just a one-off poll. I don't know if we'll get any polling today, like right before the primary. I predict that Donald Trump will win. Now, here's the kicker. Is the rise fully accounted for or not? Will Trump actually ride ahead of that? That's entirely possible. Will Nikki Haley's strategy of getting Democratic voters to cross over through October and then targeting undeclared voters thereafter because she's run out of Republicans to vote for her in the primary, will that blunt that impact? We're not exactly sure. It's an open primary, so you're going to have people that aren't registered Republicans. They register the day of, taking a GOP ballot. Now, there's another thing we got to talk about for New Hampshire, which is the Democratic primary. The Democratic primary is effectively unsanctioned. Biden will not even appear on the ballot and has mounted nothing more than a write-in campaign. He's still going to win there, but what's the differential going to be? In the end, a lot of Dems will probably not vote at all. Now, they're not necessarily going to go to the primaries at all because, again, no delegates are going to be awarded there. Biden's not on the ballot. You've got Dean Phillips and Marianne Williamson basically battling it out there. And then you've got the Democratic Party of New Hampshire. They feel pissed at the DNC right now, and they've made that known because they jumped South Carolina to the fore and New Hampshire decided not to stand down, leading to their delegates getting stripped. So New Hampshire voters, if you're a Democrat, you're not being represented in the primaries. Just keep that in mind for the general election because New Hampshire is a lean blue state, not a solid blue state. I think that this last-minute surge in the wake of four important endorsements, sweeping up, endorsements in South Carolina, the last few holdouts of that state's party structure have all endorsed Trump at this point. Haley's toast. We'll be talking about Chris Sununu's midlife crisis moment, by the way, from the other day later. I think Trump will win. I would guess 56 would probably be where he comes in, with Haley riding at 40 or thereabouts, so double digits behind. It's a considerable defeat for her, I think, in the end, because all of her campaign material pretty much went into New Hampshire. It was like a 2-to-1 over everywhere else combined. She chose to target that state. Much like with Ron DeSantis being forced out, because he targeted Iowa almost single-mindedly. He spent almost all his time there. He visited every county. He unleashed tens of millions in ads, etc., only to come in a distant second. The saving grace being that he edged out Nikki Haley, weakening her. He's now dropped. He's endorsed Trump. It was likely, if he had dropped and not endorsed anyone, I would still expect a plethora of his voters to vote for Trump. That 8 points on top of what Trump was already riding at, I think seals the deal. I don't think there are enough undeclared voters to break for Haley in the end to surmount that roughly 15-point gap. I don't think it'll come even close. I would point out as well that Nikki Haley could ride behind that because of the demoralization of her voting base. It's possible. Trump could run at 60 for all we know. I'm just cautiously pessimistic about that happening. In the end, I suspect that therefore Nikki Haley will cede. I expect that the race is going to be officially over. She's batshit if she decides to go to South Carolina, because again, South Carolina, she's got baggage there. She's been running far behind. There will be only 4 weeks thereafter to actually campaign there, with the entire party structure behind him, the tailwind at his back, every possible advantage, and again, a 35-point lead in South Carolina. A win in New Hampshire cements Donald Trump as effectively the nominee. The writing was on the wall months ago. As soon as Ron DeSantis, the only candidate who ever established national viability, began to slump, Nikki Haley made up a little bit of lost time, but she never cracked, Ron DeSantis numbers or even close. Trump is now riding in the 70s, arguably in national polling. I don't see any upsets happening. Now, which is, again, a bad thing for me as an analyzer of politics, because I'd like to do like a Super Tuesday live stream. Well, if it's just Trump versus nobody else, it's Trump versus, I don't know, a remnant write-in campaign for Nikki Haley among TDS sufferers or something like that, where she gets 5 points, it's going to be a little bit boring. I mean, I can look at the Democratic side, and I can say, okay, here's where Marianne Williamson is, here's where Dean Phillips is. I mean, it'll be amusing enough for me to go live on Super Tuesday. It's just, looking at it, it's not going to be as exciting a race as 2016, where you actually had a primary. There were actually people in after Super Tuesday. Trump is being treated as, effectively, an incumbent by the majority of Republican voters. Not all of them are hardcore supporters of him, but even at his darkest of times, he was in the high 30s. He would win right now with just his core fan base, plus people who don't like Nikki Haley in a two-person race. I genuinely think he could win with that coalition. But now he's got tens of millions of soft supporters. He's got people who are just resigned to vote for him and saying, well, it's time to unify the party. Nikki Haley doesn't have any advantage under the sun. And then she's cringe every time she comes out in public. Her new problem, again, 24 hours before the voting begins, basically, or 30-some-odd hours, she has another gaffe moment where she rambles incoherently about being teased as a child because I was brown, living in the South. By the way, a good idea to complain about Southern white people when you're rolling into South Carolina in a few weeks. That's going to be good for your campaign. Let's pull the race card, not just the gender card. I don't think she really has her messaging down pat. I think the problem is that she tried to do the so-called moderate swing thing, and so she gobbled up some of the TDS sufferers that just want to stop Trump, but it hasn't really panned out because there aren't enough of them. I was told that half of the party viscerally hated Donald Trump, and so did all the independent voters. Well, then Haley should be riding at like 70 right now. That's, unfortunately for her and fortunately for the rest of us, something that we simply don't see. Again, link in the description. You can check the polls for yourself. I'll be monitoring this through the evening because we may get a poll or two, like new polls, but I don't expect any surprises in New Hampshire. I expect Trump to win by double digits. I expect that Nikki Haley, therefore, will face pressure to drop out. Whether or not she does, though, I mean, she is called Crazy Nikki for a reason. That remains to be seen. We're not sure. She's crazy if she proceeds, but she is crazy. So I would give it a 50-50. I can't really give a prediction as to whether she drops out after the race tomorrow. I don't know if she'll concede and bow back with grace and solemnity and do the typical Republican thing, which is resign yourself to defeat, or whether she's batshit enough to be crushed in her own home state, effectively ending any possibility of a political career. That's about all. Peace out.